Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today's episode will go back to something I've talked about quite a bit on the podcast that is certainly incredibly triggering for many of you, and even triggering for family members that listen to my stuff. I have people that are very close to me that when I say, "You are God," it is triggering. They will turn it off. They will run away. Even my own wife, when she started listening to my stuff, also had this same level of resistance based on her teachings growing up. So I say often, "You are God." And I would like to talk about this further in more detail with greater nuance so that when I say this, you understand what I mean and what it means for you. What does it mean when I say God? God is a word that is anchored to a billion things. You've been hearing the word God since you were born. You have images and ideas of God built into your very being. It is how all of us are. It could be a resistance. You might see religions out there and say, "I am not believing there's any sort of God." Or you might have said, "Hey, I don't believe a God that would put us through any of this." We are taught that God is the creator of the universe, that God is the reason that we are here. And there's a ton of different definitions of God in the Bible. Before we get into that, the question that I ask you is, what do you think God is? That's the most important question. I have delayed in publishing my second book because I've come into a sort of quandary. As I studied the new earth and what it meant, I found the crux of the entire new earth is an understanding that you are God. Yet it felt like it was separate from that. So I want to discuss this more and to understand this more. We have discussed this concept with so many different pieces of literature. The law of one claims that everything is one, meaning that all is one God. Neville Goddard repeatedly in almost every lecture says, "You are God." In Hindu literature, they clearly emphasize that you are God. Yet there are people that believe it is a blasphemy to say that you are God. We see the actual core of this conflict in the story of Jesus. Jesus comes forward and says, "I am the Father, I am God." And what we find out is they did not like that very much. In the New Testament, in John, Jesus asks, "Why are you about to stone me? You're about to inflict punishment on me. For what? For all the good works I've done?" And they said, "No, we're not stoning you for any good work, but for the blasphemy, because you, a mere man, claim to be God." It's very important that you understand this exchange, because Jesus answers them in saying, "Does not your Bible say, ye are gods?" This is a very important part to realize. At no point in the Bible does Jesus, who continually says, "I am the way and the truth and the life." In John, he says, "I am the bread of life." In another portion of John, he says, "I am the light of the world. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the vine." We find all of these amazing "I am" statements throughout the New Testament, and it understandably has been misinterpreted by many, including most major churches, that Jesus is saying he is the exclusive. He is the only way. He is the only truth. He is the only life. Jesus never says that he is the only God, the only Son of God. Through the Gospels, there are numerous "I am" statements which are important to this, if you want to use the Bible to establish whether or not you are God. The first time it appears is early on in the Old Testament, Exodus 3:14. God told a man named Moses to go to the evil Pharaoh and demand that the Hebrew people be allowed to leave their slavery in Egypt. Along with this classic instruction to let my people go, God explained to Moses that his name should be called I am who I am, or ego eimi in the Greek, which means I exist or I be. This title of I am was used by God or the angel of the Lord multiple other times throughout the Old Testament. Centuries later, when Jesus used it to describe himself to his disciples, he was referring back to these expressions every time and not so subtly declaring that he is the I am. No wonder the religious Jewish people were upset. Well, these self-revealing comments by Jesus are powerful and provocative for us. The people around Jesus would have recognized what he was doing and saying. This was a stumbling block, as Paul called it in the 1 Corinthians 1:23, for some of the people, and a source of contention and a division for others. This assertion ultimately led to Jesus' crucifixion. For his true disciples, though Jesus unequivocally claiming to be God was eventually the very life-giving truth that they clung to and gave their lives for. Who is God? What is God? It's interesting, Jesus asks his disciples in Mark 8:29, "Who do you say that I am?" Do you know God? Not do you know about him, but do you really know him or on a personal level? God, it means so many different things. For the purposes of this episode, let's assume that God is the highest, most powerful being that created the universe, that created everything that we see. It's very easy to find some scientific perspective to say it all happened accidentally, that everything just happened by accident. And if you want to believe that, I get it, I understand. But assume that we mean by God is the creator. So if we take this understanding, many of us are taught that God is this being high in the clouds, sitting on a chair with a long gray beard, usually a white dude, usually a male. And so when Neville Goddard says, "You are God," it is absolutely incorrect to say that you are the only God. Recently in the Facebook group, Ricky Goodall put up a very interesting question. And after messaging with him, I could see what he was talking about. He had said that to claim that you are God is a part of the left-hand path, and it is one of the greatest sins to claim that you are God. But on the right-hand path, to become one with God, that's the correct path. By saying that you are God, you're falling to the ego. But by saying you're one with God, you're not. I want to argue that you are God. I want you to come away from this episode understanding that you are God. There is no sin in saying that you are God. There's no sin in telling the truth. So let's refer back so you can understand. If you don't care about the Bible, that's fine. Let's go back to Walter Russell when he talks about the secret of light. Everything that you see around you, all the matter that is around you, the floor that you stand on, the plants, the television, your phone, is made up of light particles. Neutrons, protons, electrons, all of them are the same light particles spinning in different directions. Everything, when it comes down to it, at its basest form, is the same light. It is the same substance. This has been referred to in many mystic books, but it's also proven in science. The same photon of light is the thing that makes up all matter. It is found in all things. So if we understand this, at its very core, all matter and all things are made up of this same light. We are all the same light. We are all God. Part of this is hard to understand because you've spent years or decades imagining a single individual as God with a personality. In your understanding of God, you will often think of God as only being able to put his or her attention on one thing at a time. Because that's how you understand consciousness. In your consciousness, you imagine one thing at a time. You see things one thing at a time. You're not able to look at multiple things at a time. So you can't comprehend this. But there is a great concept from Greek myth, the god Proteus, who could shapeshift. God is a protean being that is made up of multiple living beings. We see life in everything, in the plants, in the flowers, in the bugs, in the dogs and cats, in the squirrel and the chipmunk, everything. The same life that flows through everything is the same life that flows through you. It's the same light as well. This life, this light is all the same, and it's flowing through all things. So when you say you are God, you're saying that you exist in this universe because all things are one. For you to say that you are not God is to say that you are existing outside of God, that you are separate from God. But that would be impossible. You breathe your breath. You think your thoughts. You move within this world that is made up of God. It is all the same being. And we walk within the garment of God, as Neville Goddard refers to. You, then, are God. But if you're God and I'm God and everybody's God, what's the point? What are we doing here? It's a great question, and it's something that you should ask yourself. First, imagine if you were all-powerful and you could do anything and you're immortal. How much could you grow, expand, understand your own self from that point of all-knowing? Sometimes when we remove our understandings of the future, when we remove our ability to know what's going to happen, when we remove some of our own powers and create limitations for ourselves, we begin to learn more about ourselves. Just like playing the game of golf, where you create rules that guide you in putting the ball into the hole. And this challenge creates a resource within us, a joy within us. Consciousness is a wonderful experience. Don't we all just love to be alive? If there is a God and you see the glory of being alive in a single body, but more importantly, not knowing that you're God, makes everything wonderful. The taste of the food is wonderful because you don't remember creating this food. The smell of that wonderful perfume is fantastic because you don't remember creating this perfume. That beautiful artwork is wonderful because it's the first time that you've seen it. There's a joy in the serendipity of the moment that you cannot have if you're an all-knowing being. So with your immense power, you can put yourself into a body. Remove all knowledge of yourself and go about experiencing things. And in this process of experiencing things, you learn more about yourself. We are all God learning more about God. And there is a point where reducing your own power to immediately solve problems, to immediately travel to places, to immediately do things, by reducing your power, it creates a greater level of learning about yourself. That's what we are experiencing now. God is alone, by himself or herself. There is no gender to God, but there is a gender because all things are God. So God, he, she, the one power, in his or her infinite wisdom, chose to experience consciousness through a single being, found it to be a wonderful thing, then chose to create these living beings and life throughout an entire planet and found that to be wonderful. And if you look up into the sky at all the suns, you can see that this wonderful experiment has spread trillions of times to trillions of planets all over the universe, and each planet is God learning more about himself. You are that God. While you're in your body on earth, which is a blip of time, like a wink of the eye, a single breath, it's really not a big deal. You forget for a short time that you are God. At the same time, one could theorize that God, in his or her infinite wisdom and joy, in a desire to expand beyond what he or she has now, to learn more about him or herself, has created this universe. And when I hear people say that everything is fixed and done, I still believe, as we can see as a reflection in all life, everything is evolving. Everything is improving. We can see it with technology. We can see it with the world and our society. We can see it with our own bodies that are evolving. God wants to evolve himself. And at the same time, the question probably came up a couple billion years ago, hey, I think there should be more gods. Or within God, he found there were multiple versions of himself that deserved to experience life. So, God at first would put us into a body. Experience this as they come back, share the memories that they shared, and learn more about life in this process. And then in the process, create better forms of life, moving towards what we have now, where human beings live and breathe and work, love and lose and gain and learn in this planet, in this sort of simulation that's been created. Each of these beings can move up and learn about their power and what they can do with it. Now, some of this is just me theorizing. But if you're God alone in this universe, you have all these powers and things to create around you, but you're still alone. There may have been a desire that rose up to share in this living, in this experience, to share. And so within himself, God drew out portions of himself and separated himself into multiple various souls, and then created a system for them to learn and understand, expand, grow, and evolve into gods themselves. Perhaps a long time ago, this already happened, and we're still in a new process, learning more about ourselves as we go. God is referred to in the book of Genesis as the Elohim. God is plural. So we get from the very first book in the Bible, God is plural. God is a protean being. God is many. So it may be true that from the beginning, God was not one single being, but a group of beings. Now, we don't have a way of understanding this as individual beings living in individual bodies. But we can see it on some level with different things. For instance, we see ants that have a queen ant, and the queen ant moves through those other ants. We see that in nature. So we can see some examples of that. But we also have a discussion in the Law of One of the idea of a social memory complex. And that is when multiple beings are conscious at the same time sharing thoughts, they become a living being. This already is true of you and your body. You have billions of cells that are in your body, alive, doing their own things, having their own functions, but they make up your body. And in many ways, we are all a part of the grand man, what Swedenborg called one being, and we all make up a part of it. Perhaps some of us make up a part of the mind of God, some of us make up the part of the heart of God, but we are all a part of God. If I am a cell in the heart of God, am I not God? The biggest thing that we want to understand is the dichotomy of self versus other selves. Clearly, as we understand from the law of one, an understanding of this God-like being is a question that God is asking in third density. Should I seek out and only love myself? Should I seek out and only love others? If you say I am God and it comes from straight ego, then you may be trying to say to yourself, I am the only God. And so if you say that I am the only God and you seek to only love and please yourself, that's one route that answers one question. Or you can choose to say, you know what? I'm God, but so is everyone else. If you discover that you are God, you should also see that everybody else is God too. That's the realization. And so there are levels and dimensions of our experience of Godhood. And right now in this dimension that we're in, we are aspects of God that are making a decision to embrace ourself as God and only ourself, or embrace others as God as well as us. And then we choose that, we continue on in a sort of game-like atmosphere where we continue to ask these questions because God is using himself to learn more about himself by using these simulations in different aspects of himself, by creating a veil where the subconscious mind, which is a part of God, is unknown to us. By having a doubt or understanding if God exists, these questions are asked and we see the simulation working perfectly. You are God. And so what does that mean? Does that mean that you're all powerful? Certainly you have power. And coming to an understanding that you are God gives you greater power. We clearly see in Psalms once again, you are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you, but you shall die like men and fall like any prince. It says that in the Bible. That's the portion of the Bible that Jesus points to. We're told that we are gods in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, Jesus reminds them of this. At no time does Jesus say it is any sort of blaspheme or sin in any way to say that you are God. Never does Jesus say that in any place, in any way, shape, or form, you are God. The way that Neville explains it is that God died to become you. He became you so that you could become God. And in this conception, he is saying he gave a little piece of himself and died and is dreaming within you. You are being dreamt by God. It is very much like a puzzle. Have you ever bought a puzzle before? You might buy a puzzle box and you see a beautiful picture of a unicorn, but you open up the box and it's just a bunch of pieces. And you see the unicorn's foot and you know, well, geez, what is this? We're all puzzle pieces of God. So what we think of as just ourselves, when put together, becomes the larger God. There are definitions throughout the Bible as to what God is. We have God is love. So are you love? So when you say, I'm not love, what does that mean? There's other definitions I see where people say God is spirit, and clearly you're not spirit, so you can't say you're God. You are God and God is spirit. Your spirit is within you. It does not mean that you're not God because God is spirit. You had to empty yourself of all that you are, and you are God. So you emptied yourself of being God and took the form of death called man. In the story of Neville, he was given a vision. Neville Goddard was given a vision in which he saw David come to him in a vision and say, "You are my father." He explains later that David is a representation of all of humanity. And in this vision that he received, it was symbolic, telling him that, hey, I'm God. I created everything. So it's likely at some point in time in the game that God would tell you, hey, at this point, you're going to learn that you're God. So my own understanding of this is that in third density on this earth, we are not supposed to know that we are God. There's a reason for this. It wakes something up in us, it evolves us and leads us to a point individually of a certain kind of knowing and understanding. The next level is, after we've acknowledged and understand that we are God, what we do with this power. Now that we have slightly started to understand the power that we have, our power is what Neville Goddard says is keyed low. So while we're here, it's keyed low. Our imagination does create reality, but there's a little bit of time it takes. And it's created in a certain way so you don't quite know for sure that your imagination has created this reality. The universal fatherhood is you, and you are God the Father, and there's no way in eternity that it could ever be revealed save through the Son, according to Neville Goddard. No one has seen God but the Son, the only Son, who is in the bosom of the Father. He has made him known. John 1:18. Why haven't you seen God? For we're told in the 33rd of Exodus, you cannot see my face, for no one can see me and live. The key thing that we come to an awareness of in this density, to move into the new earth density, that we are God. If we are God, we have unlimited power. We are limitless. We are the source of all things. We have the power in all things. We are the love. We are the Spirit. And it does begin to change everything around us. By embracing the idea that you're not God, with your own creative power, you've limited yourself in the powers that you have. You are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. You are God, but so am I. As it says in the Bible, something that Neville points out to often is our clue of understanding what God is. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. So, hear, O Israel, the I am, our I am, is one I am. The word God being pure, we use the word our, image, other, rather than my. You are God, so am I. And you do not lose your identity, neither will I, according to Neville. And yet we are one because we have the same Son. So all of us, the billions of us, are the same Father, having the same Son. So though we're individualized and tend forever towards greater and greater individuality, we still are one because God is one. God wants us to individualize. God wants us to continue on our own journeys, expanding in this power, understanding this power. So the question is it blasphemy to say that you are God? You can understand why this came about, because people that walked around that could say, I am God, and no one else is, would create a distortion of their own ego, and it could be hurtful to them. It could distort the world around them. But if you say, I am God and everyone else is God, then it's not blasphemy. Neither is blasphemy, for there is no blasphemy. The only sin is missing the mark. The question is, what kind of a God are you? Are you a God that seeks to only love the self, or one that serves others? The system is designed with a prejudice towards serving others. And it's much more difficult and much harder to follow the path of only serving the self. I think it's designed for a reason like that, with this bias in mind, but it's still there. You're given free will. God never tells you what to do. That's part of the design of the system. Can we do miracles? Should we be revered by other people? Should we be worshipped? No, we should not be revered and worshipped by other people, because they are God too. How can there be a billion gods on this earth? If all of us are God, who's the real God? Most people think there is only one God. How can you claim that there are many gods? There's only one God. Not more than one God only, but we are all a part of God. Thus we are God. We are all a part of the one God, thus we are God. We are a part of the puzzle, but not the entire puzzle. After death, it's possible that we return to our real home, the consciousness of God in all things. A place where you are neither man or woman, You're neither white nor black. You're neither child nor a grown-up. For you are your true self, a part of the whole, a spirit that is chosen for an existence on the earthly plane to learn lessons, to grow in love and understanding. We are God, who has created a computer game, our three-dimensional material world, and who has placed parts of himself, his own alter personalities, in this three-dimensional world to learn to grow in love. We are his alter personalities. That's why it does not make any difference if you are white or black, rich or poor, man or woman. We are all alter personalities of the one unconditionally loving being of light. An awareness of our godliness is an awareness of our oneness. And when this happens, then it suddenly seems ridiculous to have sexism or racism. If someone attacks someone else, he's attacking God. Strangest of all, because we are all parts of God. God is also an atheist too, and he loves atheists just as much as he loves deeply religious people who go to church 7 times a day. God has no ego. He has no personal interests. He does not boast. He does not get back at a person. If the person doesn't worship him, he himself allowed us to learn because he gave us a free will. God does not feel love. God is love. I know that you have sat and tried to contemplate God. The question I get sometimes, well, if there's a God, is there lower beings that are super powerful, that are like gods? For instance, like in Marvel, when they have a concept of God, Thor is considered a god, as well as Zeus is considered a god. So that's a certain interesting concept. And as we know from Neville and Frederick Dotson, there is no fiction. So there certainly is a possibility that in other realms and other planets, there are godlike beings that could be considered gods. I'm sure that there are beings that are giants that are as big as planets. I'm sure there are many different kinds of beings. The word that's used in the Law of One is the logos, whatever way you want to pronounce it. But there are just different levels of logos. The earth is a living entity. The earth is God. The sun is a living entity. The sun is God. The solar system is a living entity. It is all God. The ant is a living entity. The ant is God. All is God. What we are doing in our spiritual path, at least from my own awareness and what I am trying to teach, is that we are becoming one with the idea that we are God. And as we become one with this idea, we gain greater power, wisdom, understanding. We access a little more of the power that we have because we're not blocking it. We're not blocking ourselves by saying everything is random, we're happy accidents, and that's what it is. If you're God, it means a lot more than you think. And so when we have the line from the Bible that says, "Be still and know that I am God," that is the key to prayer and meditation. In your prayer or meditation, spend 5 minutes just in stillness, contemplating that you are God. And as you do this, many centers of your consciousness awaken, and you can enter into higher levels of consciousness that to me are integrally related to God and God's consciousness. You are God. And we are in God's school. Upon this planet, we are learning lessons of power and love and consciousness. And as we finish up on this particular tract of civilization, we move to an even greater one. And the lesson continues as God is raising gods. And at some point, we become a planet. We become a star. At some point, we create our own galaxy, our own universe. And God is creating many gods of himself that create many universes. And there will be a point that every person, in my own belief, there is going to be every single person on this planet will create their own universe. We are learning these lessons of creation in Creator School. We're learning the decisions of what path we want to go on in this Creator School, of the self and of love and of others. And it's a perfect simulation to learn these lessons in God school, which is what we're in. We are in God school. We're learning these lessons of God. I know that when you hear me say these things, it can be triggering. I get it. I understand. Forget about it if it doesn't resonate with you. If you strongly believe that you're not God, go for it. But I want to emphasize, it is not a sin. This is not about my ego. I'm not standing here saying, I'm special. No. It's that we are all special. We are all amazing and wonderful. And when we awaken to this, when we awaken to the fact that we are all the same being, then we can together become so powerful. We can cure disease and all problems together. All things are possible for God. And we are awakening to this. So I would love it if you awoke to this fact. If you could see the power around you that you are God. And if you could awaken to your God-like power together with me, because we are in a God dream. And we are dreaming this God dream together. And that is what is happening now. Go back through your life, and does it not feel like you're subtly learning lessons all the time about your God power? How to use it, how to apply it, how to love, how to hate, what the impacts of cause and effect are, your own conscience. All of these things are lessons in God, and that's what you're learning. You can certainly contradict with me. Please put it in the comments. This is one of those things that I find difficult to express. It's why I've struggled in this part of my book to express that you are God, because in reality, it's only something that you can experience. In the highest levels of meditation, I have felt this God-like connection. I have felt this power that is within me, not that I'm observing it. I know many of you have also experienced this as well. So the question is, are you God? My answer is yes. There's no way that you're not. God is all things, and you are a part of this world. And because you're a part of this world, you are God. And if there's a part of you that is resisting this, there's a part of you that's resisting your own power. Now, our power is still limited in this world, but it gets pretty significantly maximized once you understand your God-like power. You can answer prayers. Look what happened to Jesus when he awakened to the fact that he was God. He went around and instantly healed, instantly overcame so many different things. That is where our power is located. That's how Jesus explained it. If you can find the I am within you, then you can find your true power. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.